Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Moneymaker Inside. It's been 2 weeks, and I'm excited to be back. I love coaching. I was kind of like itching to just get back into teaching. I love to go out there and make it happen financially, whether it's investing in cryptocurrency, whether it's investing in real estate, doing flips, investing in my import business, and so much more, coaching, international speaking. And at the same time, my number one thing, the thing that gives me the most meaning and fulfillment in life is when I'm able to go out there and coach aspiring entrepreneurs, people that, are really excited about taking their life to the next level. What's up, Juicer? How you doing? Good to see you. And welcome to Moneymaker Monday. Today, big topic, a topic that's been long overdue, quite honestly, which is how to make money in real estate with no money down, with no money. Okay, so there's a lot of people that say you need money to make money, right? There's a common saying, you need money to make money. What's up, Justice? You need money to make money. And that for the most part is true. That for the most part is true in any business, in any endeavor that you want to start, whether you want to start a coffee shop, or you want to start an online marketing company, or you want to buy investment properties. In every scenario, the common denominator is that you got to have money. You got to have money to make money. And what we're going to be talking about is going against the grain of that. It's going to defy the rules, the common rules of going against this notion that you need money to make money. And that's what we're going to focus on for the next, about 45 minutes to an hour. I want to go a little longer today because I really want to get some substance in. I want to get into the nitty gritty, into the psychology of what it is to make money in real estate. What's up, Locke? So basically, before we even get started, I want to make a quick shout out to the metamorphosis that's happening in Bali in 7 months. Mark it down on your calendar, October 4th to the 9th. That's, President's Day weekend? Not President's Day weekend. What's October 4th to the 9th? Well, you guys will tell me. You'll check your calendar and tell me. I think it's Columbus Day week. We are going on an insane tour to Bali in Indonesia. We have a private mansion that Michelle has rented out. It is ridiculous. You can go to the website. You can see the property on the website, callingallgamechangers.com, www.callingallgamechangers.com. We're going to have coaches in business and finance. We're going to have coaches in spirituality. We're going to have coaches in mindset. All the areas in life, when you're winning in those areas of life, you're empowered. You feel purpose and meaning in life. And that's what this really is an investment in you. An investment in you. So don't look at this like a regular vacation. We're going to be doing some work out there, and we're going to be having a ton of fun. We're going to be getting our hearts full, our cups full with spirituality, going to some amazing, amazing temples, amazing, some of the world's most exotic beaches. And, in the upcoming months, we're going to be talking about the surprise guest speakers, the trainers that are going to be on this tour. And that's what I'm so excited about on this retreat is the caliber of trainers. And it's like killing me not to tell you some of the names of some of these trainers that are going to be on this tour, but it's going to be ridiculous. And it will absolutely be an under-promising and over-delivering on what this retreat is all about, which is going to be about taking your life to the next level. That's what metamorphosis is. It's when the caterpillar transforms into its destiny of being the butterfly. And that's what each and every one of you is. Each and every one of you has your ability to be great. Everyone is chosen, but not everybody chooses. So with that, I'd like to get into today's topic. Making money in real estate. So first, I want to start by talking about this idea, this notion of what is this thing that we always see where it says, make money in real estate with no money. We see it all the time, make money in real estate with no money. And it's become almost like a cliche in itself. I think as much as we see it, we don't necessarily understand. The common person doesn't understand how that's even possible or what people are talking about when they see books, when they see webinars, when they see systems being sold about making money in real estate with no money. How is that possible? So in a nutshell, I'll wrap it up. I'll sum it up in 2 words: flipping contracts. Flipping contracts. And that's essentially what all these real estate gurus are referring to when they're talking about making money in real estate with no money. Flipping contracts. So before we go any further, let's talk about what flipping a contract is and how does that happen? Where does it come from? So basically, flipping a contract means that you have a seller and you're not flipping the house. You're buying the right to buy the house. You have a contract that gives you the right to buy the house. That's different from buying the house. So you find what's called a motivated seller. We're going to talk about what a motivated seller is, but basically somebody that's in some type of bind that needs to sell immediately. And we're gonna define the characteristics, the classification of what is a motivated seller. We're gonna get into that in a little bit. But basically, you're getting a contract with a motivated seller, and then you are basically buying the right to assign that contract to a buyer, to a potential buyer, to the actual end buyer. And you're basically brokering the deal in the middle. That's what flipping a contract is. You are flipping the contract. You're taking the contract to buy the property and you are assigning it to the actual end user, which is the buyer, ultimately is the buyer. So the biggest part of flipping a contract is really, in my opinion, the first part, which is finding the motivated seller. So what is a motivated seller? A motivated seller is somebody that, like I said, is in a bind, needs to sell fast, okay? Is not your typical person that calls up a broker and says, hey, listen, I'm thinking about selling my house. No, this is not somebody with time on their hands like that. This is somebody that it's almost like an act of desperation. They are in some type of dire need to sell their house. What could that be? That could be a divorce, husband and wife getting divorced. Neither of them have the money to be able to float 2 households, so they have to sell that house. They have to sell that house and the proceeds are going to go to both of them so they can move on with their life. That's one example. Another example, a death in the family. I actually had this happen to me about 1 year and 2 months ago where a guy died. And basically the daughter and the son couldn't come to terms on the house. And the lawyer, their lawyer, who was managing their estate, basically said, okay, the son is willed $150,000 on this property, and at the same time, if the daughter can't make him whole, then they're going to sell the house in order to make him whole. Well, it turned out to be a great deal for me where I was able to come in and basically create a win-win situation where I was able to have the daughter that grew up in that house and had a massive attachment to the house stay in the house and continue to be actually living in the house as my tenant while she sold me the house and was able to make her brother whole, and all while mourning for their father, like actually creating a solution for a family that was actually looking for a solution, looking to change, to turn the page and onto the new chapter in their life called moving on. So that's one of the greatest things I love about real estate is in many cases you'll find that you are able to not only make money for yourself, but you're able to actually create a solution that somebody is really looking for. So a motivated seller, let's just recap. A motivated seller is somebody who's in a bind, who needs to sell, whether they're getting divorced, whether there was a death in the family. Another example is if someone gets relocated. Let's say you work for Pepsi Cola, and all of a sudden Pepsi tells you one fine day, hey, listen, we need you to move to Arizona, and we need you to move in the next 3 months if you want to keep your job. Well, you want to keep that job, let's say, and you move to Arizona. What are you going to do with this house? You might rent it. You might float 2 mortgage payments or a rental and a mortgage payment for a short period of time. But inevitably, at some point, let's say your tenant that you rented the house for moves out, and now you're living in Arizona, and now you're covering 2 mortgages, and now you don't have the money to fix and renovate that house so that you could rent it to the next person. Well, then you might be in that classification of a motivated seller. Somebody that doesn't care, that has no attachment. Maybe you live out of state and now it doesn't make any sense to keep the house, so you are motivated to sell that house. So these are examples of a motivated seller. Somebody maybe is going through depression. Life is hard, and there's people that are going through some really tough times that maybe you and I can't even relate to. And the thing that they're looking to do is simplify their life. So they come to you as the motivated seller, and they basically sell you the house. Instead of at fair market value, they sell you the house at substantially a lower price, a dramatic drop from fair market value. So this is basically what a motivated seller is. Just statistically speaking, I think that this is the most important part of flipping a contract. It's the most important part of flipping a house. Being able to buy right, being able to find the deals. That in itself is an art form. And if you just listen to what I'm saying right now, this portion about finding the motivated seller, you could literally make yourself a fortune. You can make yourself millions of dollars a year just finding equity in properties. What I call finding the money. Because when you find equity from day one in a property, essentially you're finding money. That's equity equals money. So basically, the reason why I call this an art form is because, like I said before, the majority of sellers are not motivated sellers. The majority of people call up a broker and do it the conventional way. They look at comps. They look at, they negotiate. They wait. They have money in the bank. They can maintain their expenses and hold that house. They're not in a desperate act to sell. So I would say, statistically speaking, motivated sellers is probably less than 5% of total sellers that you'll find in the market. Less than 5%. And I'm going to do a separate Facebook Live next week, just a heads up, on the method in getting motivated sellers. The method. There's many different methods. Postcards, knocking on doors, finding bird watchers. There's a terminology called bird watching, which I'll get into next week. But basically, the art of finding the deal. Okay, so now let's characterize the motivated seller. We already said his circumstances. He could be getting divorced. He could have a death in the family. But the bottom line is there's some level of desperation. There's some level of urgency. The motivated sellers, from a characteristic point of view, are people that are feelings driven, that are emotionally driven. And as a result of that, they tend to do irrational things. What do I mean by irrational things? Maybe they had their house on the market for $300,000 and they weren't able to sell. Nobody was biting at $300,000. So they do something what I consider to be irrational, which is they drop the house from $300,000 to $200,000. Now, a rational person might drop the house from $300,000 to $290,000 or $295,000 upon the advice of a broker, upon the advice of somebody who is better equipped to give them useful information and basically ascertain what that property should really be sold for. But an irrational seller, a motivated seller, an emotional seller is somebody that is going to do irrational things. They'll drop the price 30% in one day and say, to hell with it, let's just drop it to $200,000. There are people out there like that. And those are the people, when you can find them, when you can find these people, this category of people called motivated sellers, you can create a great solution for them to move on with their life, and you can get a property and find money, find equity from day one, real money, real cash that you, your family can benefit from in the long run if you can put the deal together. So basically we talked about some of the characteristics of a motivated seller, but we've talked about it from the standpoint of positivity. If we could be honest, I've been talking about it in a positive way. I want to share with you, and this is the stuff that nobody ever tells you about. You don't hear about this from the real estate gurus in books or in videos. I don't know why, but I've been waiting for someone to really share this part, which is the dark side of flipping contracts, the dark side of dealing with irrational people, dealing with motivated sellers. And I just feel like I want to put this out there because I don't want to sugarcoat it. You almost have to be somewhat of a psychologist in this business and just know how to manage people's expectations. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. The dark side of dealing with motivated sellers is the fact that, like I said, they're irrational. So just like they could be irrational in a good way and give you a great deal, they could be irrational in a bad way and all of a sudden flip out on you, no pun intended, but get pissed off basically. And basically, when they find out that you're actually making money off their house, the house that they're about to lose, a lot of times people get pissed off. They get cold feet, and they can be very hostile. I had a friend tell me today, this is a very interesting story, a nightmare in flipping a contract. So this guy flips contracts all day long. He was telling me about a deal that he did just recently. He got a motivated seller to sign a contract that he was going to sell him his property or have the right, like I said, the right to buy his property for $95,000. The guy was cool with it. The seller understood the parameters of the deal. He understood that the guy was going to buy the property for $95,000. Well, one day before the closing, 1 day or 2 days, I can't remember what he told me, but it was a couple of days before the closing. Apparently, the statement, the closing documents came out. So the attorney, they pass it along to the seller, to the buyer. Everybody now has the same information. And the seller got wind that the flipper, the contract flipper, my friend, was going to make $10,000 on the deal. And he got so pissed off. And he basically said, how could you be making $10,000 on my house for doing jack shit? He was so pissed. He was literally hostile, and he called him every name in the book. And, it's a harsh reality that, and you got to get it from the standpoint of the seller. You can understand why they might not justifying it, but why they would get upset. I can understand, I can empathize with it, that they worked so hard to have this house. They paid taxes, they made sacrifices, they probably repaired the house over the course of years, and now they're losing the house to you, and you're just in a non-emotional way taking that $95,000 and selling it to somebody for $105,000. How dare you? How dare you make $10,000 for doing nothing on the deal? Well, I got news for you. And I want to just lay some truth on you if I can. And the truth is, and don't get it twisted, this is the truth, is that it is a lie, an absolute lie, that you did nothing for the deal. Brokering the deal, being able to master brokering the deal, putting the pieces together, finding the motivated seller, finding the man with the money, the actual end user, the cash buyer, and putting it together is an art form. And I'll prove it to you. When you sell your house, if you think about the last time when you were at a closing table and you were either buying a house or selling a house, if you look at the person that got paid the most money, it is always the broker. It is not the seller's attorney. It is not the buyer's attorney. It's not the one who recorded the docs or any of those people. If you look at the deal, the person that made the most money at that closing, generally 3 to 6%, depending on what the deal looks like, is the broker. It is an art to broker a deal. So don't ever get in your head that flipping a contract is easy, or that you're doing nothing, or that you're stealing money from somebody. Psychologically, I think that there's almost like a negative connotation about flipping contracts. And I just want to nip that in the butt right away, that if this is something for you, if this is something that you're interested in doing, like everything else, I want you to be empowered. I feel like when you're empowered in life, when you're out there knowing that not only are you creating a win for yourself, but you're creating wins for so many people down the trough, that you're basically creating a circle, an energy of win-win, that is when you feel most empowered. So when you're able to do that, that's such a great thing, because you're helping out so many people along the way. So that is the truth about brokering. And oftentimes I think that not only is it an art form, but I'll say this, I'm going to actually take it to a further extent, that flipping a contract can sometimes be harder than flipping a house. And flipping a house, obviously, you have to close on the house, you have to have the money, you have to be able to find a contractor, and then the contractor has to build your house, and then you have to find a seller, and you have to hire a broker. It sounds like a lot more work, but I will tell you this, flipping a contract, being able to flip a contract, requires a level of creativity. It requires a level of imagination. And the more creative that you have to get, the more that you have to actually put in your time, educate yourself. Juan, you're asking, what are the risks of flipping a contract? We're going to get into that. What are the risks? Actually, we're going to talk about the advantages. We're going to talk about the disadvantages of flipping a contract. But to answer your question in a very short term, really right now, really there's no risk. That's the beauty of flipping a contract, is that you're not investing your money. All you're investing essentially is your time. That's really what you're putting in. We're going to get into that in greater detail. But like I said, from my friend's nightmare scenario, it is so important to what I call seed the psychology. Seeding the psychology to the seller, managing their expectations before the deal actually goes through. What does that mean, seeding the psychology? For me, it means when you talk to a motivated seller, and let's use my friend's example, $95,000, the guy was completely okay with selling him the house for $95,000 until he found out the day before the closing that he was going to sell it for $105,000 to somebody else. He was upset about that $10,000 margin that somebody was going to make, as he says it, for doing nothing, which we know is not true. We established that. Juan, you don't need to put down a down payment on a contract. You can actually assign a contract. You can actually have a contract for as little as $10. I think it does depend on the state. It's a state-to-state thing, but for as low as $10, you can literally lock somebody up in a contract. So to answer your question, you don't have to put down 10% or 5%. You can put down as little as $10 and actually have a contract signed. We're going to talk about having a template that you can get from online and you could just print out and actually utilize. Basically, managing expectations of people. One of the questions in terms of the jargon I like to ask a person that's going to sell me their house below value is, are you okay if I make a profit on your house? It sounds like a simple question because you would assume that everybody knows that you're going to make a profit, right? But again, you're not dealing with a sophisticated seller. You're dealing with somebody that's probably desperate themselves, and the last thing that they want to know is that you're going to make a profit on their house that they worked so hard to keep and now are going to lose. So I like to manage people's expectations, lay down a foundation where we have a transparency that there's a chance that I'm going to keep your house, and maybe I'll do some renovations to it and I'll sell it, or I'll keep it for my children, whatever the case. But there's also a likelihood that I may sell your house, and as soon as the closing date that we have set up, I might sell your house. Do you have an issue with that? So I like to get that out right away, and really, like I said, manage expectations. And this is the stuff they don't tell you when they talk about flipping contracts. So I hope that this stuff is useful about the psychology, but understand you're taking someone's house that they're essentially losing to you, and you're profiting off of it. So, that could be a nerve-wracking situation at times. That said, you might also deal with somebody that's, like we said, motivated sellers can be irrational. They can also be batshit crazy. So if you're dealing with somebody that's like a little nuts, what you might want to do, and this is just an option. Again, you're not going to hear people talk about this, but one of the things that you might want to do, it might be prudent on your part, is to have two separate closings. So having a closing between you and the seller, and then having a separate closing between you and the buyer. And it could be the same day. It literally could be like right at the same time, literally the same day. And maybe you pay a little bit extra for having a double closing happen like that. But it might be the prudent thing to do. A lot of times it's hard for people that are selling their house to be sitting across the table from you, watching you get a check for $10,000 while some other dude that they didn't even know was part of the deal basically come in and profit from your house. So it's something to think about. And just a quick note about that is you can separate the closings as long as there's not a lender involved for the buyer. So if the buyer has a lender, involved, then you're probably going to have to do the closing at the same time, because the transfer agent is going to have the original name of the seller, the old name of the seller, and the buyer. So that's going to have to happen at once. And again, like I said, this is all in the jargon. This is all in the lingo that you're going to learn it through experience about learning how to manage people's expectation, so that you don't end up with a nightmare scenario like my friend had for $95,000. So let's recap a little bit, talk about the steps to flipping a contract, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare flipping a contract to flipping a house and talking about the advantages and disadvantages, and maybe get more into answering Juan's question about the risks of flipping a contract versus flipping a house. So step one, and again, you could literally make a fortune off of just step one. Just step one is finding what I like to call finding the money. Finding the money is finding the deal, finding the motivated sellers. And next week, I am going to have a Facebook Live that is exclusively going to talk about finding motivated sellers, how to find them. Okay? So finding the motivated seller. That's step one. Step two, in my opinion, is finding the buyer. Now, I know that some people think that finding the buyer should maybe be step one, but I promise you, if you have a house for $100,000 that you got a motivated seller to give you a contract on at $40,000, and now you're selling that house to anybody, for $50,000 all cash, I guarantee you will not have a problem selling that house. So I think that in terms of the emphasis and the energy and the time investment, it should be on the front end in finding the deal. If you find the deal, if the deal is a strong deal, you will find buyers. It's kind of like that old cliche, that Kevin Costner movie. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. What is that? What is that movie? Well, you guys, maybe one of you guys could shout it out. But that movie with Kevin Costner. If they build it, they will come. That's the same thing. If you get the deal, if you get the motivated seller to sign a contract with you for selling that house to you for half the price, there will be buyers. I guarantee it. You will be able to reach out to an email list, blast out a buyer list of people with money in the bank or people that have hard money backing them, and you will be able to get buyers. So for me, step two is finding the buyer. And finally, putting the deal together, getting a closing attorney, and obviously getting the contract signed on both ends. And I like to tell the buyer that there has to be a non-refundable deposit. So non-refundable deposit means 50% of your money that you plan to make on this deal. Let's say you're planning to make 10 grand on this flip. 50% of it, let's say $5,000 in this example, should go towards a non-refundable deposit. This is your security, because obviously you have your own time investment in there as well. Hi, JD. How long? Long time no see. Great job. And what are you doing? Oh, hey, what's up, Dante? How you doing? I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me a question. I'm good, brother. I'm good. I'm making it, man. Just every day, man. Just working hard, man. So, basically, that is the primary thing, is securing the non-refundable deposit. When you can secure the non-refundable deposit, then essentially what you've done is you've paid yourself. Because if the deal doesn't go through and let's say you have to walk away from the entire deal, at least you got the non-refundable deposit. That kind of pays you for your time. So in many cases, and this is a litmus test, if you want to know if your buyer is serious, ask them the question. I need a non-refundable deposit. I need $5,000 non-refundable if you want to buy this house for $50,000. If they're serious, if they're worth their weight in gold, and they know that the house is worth $100,000 and they can get it for you from $50,000, and they don't know that you paid $40,000, they will give you that $5,000 non-refundable because they plan to buy the house. So it's a great indicator to see if a guy is serious. If he's not serious, and he's just talking to random people about something in theory, but he doesn't really have the money to come up with in 30 days, then he's not going to give you the $5,000. He's not going to put his $5,000 at risk, essentially. So these are some of the primary components. I want to talk to you a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages so we could kind of draw a line, because a lot of people ask me, JD, do you prefer flipping contracts or flipping houses? And, for me, the answer is neither. I like rental properties. I love rental properties. So I like to take the two concepts and kind of create my own thing, which is to take the flipping contract concept, or the flipping, basically finding the motivated seller concept, and then buying a house and holding it for rental income if I can do that, and if not, flipping the house. But I'm going to get into the advantages and disadvantages. My opinion is not like the law of the universe, so I want to give it to you both ways, and I want to show you the advantages and the disadvantages of flipping a contract versus flipping a house. Okay, so we're going to get into number one, the biggest advantage of flipping a contract. And Juan asked me this question. Now I'm going to answer your question. Is you don't need your own capital. Your money is not at risk, and that is the biggest part of why people flip contracts, is because for the beginner, for the person that's just getting started in real estate, to be able to get into a deal without putting your money at risk, it might be prudent to do it that way at first until you get your feet wet and really understand all the dynamics of the real estate game, including dealing with lawyers and dealing with title and all kinds of things like that. So first thing is no capital. You can get a contract and put down as little as $10 and have a contract. You can actually have a contract signed with earnest money, $10 earnest money, and you are literally binded into a contract for 30 days where that seller cannot sell to anybody but you. So that's number one. That's the biggest reason why people talk about flipping contracts, is because you don't have to put any money down. Number two, obviously there's no risk, there's no obligation to buy. You can walk away from the deal. If you're buying a house, chances are you have to put down a deposit. Chances are that deposit might be somewhere in around the 5%, 10% mark that you've got to put in escrow with your lawyer. You probably got to put down some type of down payment with your lawyer just to draft contracts, go back and forth. So your money is already you're already on the hook. So what the beauty of flipping contracts is that you could walk away from the deal. If need be, you could essentially walk away from the deal. So no money down, you can walk away from the deal. And this is what I like about flipping contracts, is that it's scalable. This is a really big thing, scalability. There's a 19-year-old kid, I forgot his name, it escapes me, but this guy did like 8 or 9 flips last month. And he made like $80,000 just flipping contracts. Just flipping, 19 years old. Made $80,000 just flipping contracts, not flipping property, not buying property, not swinging a hammer, not dealing with rehab and renovation and going to Home Depot and doing that type of stuff. No, just flipping paper, flipping the right to sell a house, flipping contracts. So it's scalable. You can do it all over the country. You can probably do it all over the world if you can understand what the rules are in other countries, the local municipalities, how things work out there. But even in your own backyard, let's say you live in New York, or you live in Oklahoma, or you live in Georgia. The beauty is that there's houses everywhere. So if you could become a master in your own neighborhood and find out all the renovation, all the houses that are either abandoned, or the people are distressed, or they're going through a divorce, or whatever the case, which we're going to get into next week. I told you we're going to get into that next week. You can make a fortune in just being able to just focus on that, never worry about rehab, and really make it scalable. Let's see your question, Juan. The contract that you sign with the seller is for the right to sell the property. The right to sell the property, right? The right to buy the property, essentially, right? Because you're buying, the right to assign, to either buy or assign the contract. So just want to make that little distinction, Juan. Great question. You are signing a contract that actually allows you to either buy the property yourself or assign it. Make it assignable. The contract is assignable to another buyer potentially. So I hope that answered your question. So basically, these are the advantages. I named 3 of them. No money down, so no risking your money. You can walk away from the deal, and it's scalable. You can make a fortune just by focusing on getting motivated sellers and learning how to put these deals together with the motivated seller and the all-cash buyer, essentially, right? Now, the disadvantages. So, and this is one of the reasons why at this point in my life, I prefer flips, is because, first and foremost, I like to be in control. And that's a big thing for me. Now, everyone is going to have a different feeling about that. Everyone is going to have a different level of comfort with control. When you are flipping a contract, you are dependent on the buyer, on the all-cash buyer to actually close on the deal. So if the all-cash buyer gives you their money, their non-refundable deposit, that's great, and you can profit on that alone. But to get the full money and actually close on the deal, you are dependent on the buyer closing. So when you're dependent on the buyer, you have less control. So that's one of the things that is a little bit nerve-wracking for me, is wasting my time and dealing with people that are not serious, or dealing with unforeseen circumstances of someone else that has nothing to do with me, and then having that affect my life, my livelihood. So not having control of the deal, having to depend on sellers, is one of the disadvantages of flipping a contract versus flipping a home. The bigger thing for me, and this is why I like to flip projects, I like to flip homes, again, at this moment, at this juncture in my life, is you make significantly less on a specific deal if you're flipping a contract versus flipping a home. And it's really common sense. I mean, just let's go back to the original example where I said there's a house that's $100,000, and you basically got someone to sign that contract. You got a motivated seller that's willing to either sell you the house or allow you to assign it to someone else to buy the house for $40,000. If you turn around and flip it for $50,000, knowing that house costs $100,000, and the person who buys the house knows that with, let's say, $10,000 worth of renovation, $15,000 worth of renovation, they could essentially buy that house from you for $50,000, put $10,000 to $15,000 in the house, and then sell the house for $100,000. Who do you think got the better of the deal? Well, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. I mean, everyone has a different perspective, but clearly the buyer that's going to be swinging the hammer, or hire the people that are swinging the hammer, that's going to take the deal all the way to the end zone, all the way to the finish line, is going to make more money than you, the flipper, you, the wholesaler of the contract. So that's not a good thing or a bad thing, but in terms of time investment, you know, obviously the person that is renovating the house is going to make and deserves to make more money than the one flipping the contract. So, you know, just one of the things to consider. And then my third reason, the disadvantage, and this is why I, again, love rental property, is as the buyer, as the person that's actually getting the deal from the flipper, from the wholesaler, it's such an advantage in terms of once I'm able to hold the property, there's so many ways that I can make money. I can make the money renting the property. I can make the money through appreciation, or a combination of both. I can borrow against the house if there's equity from day one. If I really need money, I can borrow against the house and get a line of credit to go out there and buy another property. So all these different things exist. I'll give you an example. I bought a property last year in New Rochelle. Property was worth, property purchase price was about $750,000. Property today, a year later, is worth over $1 million. Now, that property is worth over $1 million because I bought it right. It was never really a $750,000 property. But like I mentioned to you, there was a motivated seller that had a death in the family that needed to sell the property so that they can make their sibling whole and basically restore the estate. So this was through kind of like a estate sale. So, you know, that $200,000 is not something that, well, you can all make the argument, did I work for it? You know, I guess I did, just by being prudent and finding the deal in the first place. But the last thing I would have wanted to do was buy that and then flip that contract for $10,000. Would you rather make $10,000 on that deal and hand it over to somebody else that could potentially make $100,000, $200,000 on it? So that's what you have to consider when you're talking about flipping contracts. There's all kinds of hybrids along the way. There's people that don't want to use their own money but want to stay in the deal, so they find partners, they find equity partners. So we can talk more about that later on. And if anybody's interested, definitely drop something in the comments section if you have a question about how to put a deal together where you stay in the deal without money, because you can do that. There are ways to not use your money but stay in the deal and not flip the contract, like finding an equity partner that is willing to front the cash and be the money guy while you basically are the deal maker. So before I wrap up, there's a couple of things that I want you to get down as far as the lingo, as far as the jargon, the flipping jargon, the money-making flipping jargon. So obviously, the biggest part of the deal is finding the motivated seller. And I don't know about you guys, but I like to be in control. Control is important to me. So for me, I want to get that contract signed as soon as possible. And if anybody is interested, I'll put a link where you can actually get a one-page document just to show you what a standard contract is. And it's like literally one or two pages. And it's so simple. It's very non-intimidating for a seller. A couple of signatures, and basically you're in contract. So basically, being able to get control is by getting the contract signed. So one of the things that I want to ask when I speak to a buyer, and there's about 10 questions. What is your name? Who owns the property? Things like that, kind of like obvious questions. But then ultimately, the real question that you want to ask is, what is the absolute least amount of money that you will accept if I can get you paid in 30 days? And then you stay silent. The person that speaks first loses. The person that speaks first loses. I want you to remember that. This is the art of negotiation. Art of negotiation. Once you put it out there, that pivotal question, the person that balks first is the one who loses. Now, what do I mean by that? You are looking, what your intention is to find a seller who is willing to tell you, okay, $40,000, $50,000 on that $100,000 property, because they don't know what you're thinking. You're not giving away your cards. You're holding your cards. You're asking a question. What is the absolute least you would accept if I can get you paid right away in 30 days or less? And basically, they are revealing to you their cards, their problems, their situation, their desperation, their urgency. They are showing you their cards. It's like a poker game, and they are literally revealing to you their cards. Once you do that, the rule of thumb for me is about 40%, 40 to 50%. Some people say 30% in terms of what is the amount that you should offer as a ratio of what the actual after repair value is, what they call the ARV, what that house would be if it was in a fixed up condition, what would that house actually sell for, what would that house compare for in comps if a realtor was to come get an appraiser to appraise that house. So somewhere between 40 and 50% is the number that I have. Other people are more aggressive. They want to get that house at 30% of the actual value of the property. But somewhere between 40 and 50 is that's kind of like my sweet spot that I like to offer. So if a house is $100,000, I'm trying to get that house at $40,000, $45,000, somewhere in that range. So I can turn around and, either flip the contract for $50,000, $55,000, $60,000, or likely in my scenario is to hold the property. That's what I'm looking to do, is hold the property and rent it out and have a cash flow for years and years and years and gain appreciation on that property and hopefully one day refinance that property and pull money out and buy another property and yada, yada, yada. You get the point. So what is the absolute least amount of money that you would accept if I was to get you paid in 30 days? I want you to write that down. Remember that. That is the negotiating tactic. And then you stay silent and let them do the talking and let them reveal to you what your cards are. The second thing I want you to tell you, and this is why I say you win the deal regardless, because when you stay silent, even if they tell you a number that's unrealistic for the deal, let's say they want $100,000 for the property and the property is worth $100,000, there's no deal for you to make on it, then be willing to walk away from the deal. I want you to write that down. Be willing to walk away from the deal. The greatest negotiators are willing to walk away from a deal. Why? Because their pipeline of deals is so vast, is so great. When you are inundated with deals, when you have a pipeline of different motivated sellers offering you and you're negotiating 10 times a week, you're going to be a lot more likely to be okay with losing one individual deal. You're not going to have that attachment. You're not going to fall in love with any particular deal. So you don't want to have that attachment. You don't want to fall in love. This is a very non-emotional transaction for you. This is what you do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. However, if you're a part-time real estate investor, part-time flipper, whatever the case may be, being willing to walk away from any deal, being willing to walk away. So the answer to the question that you asked, what is the absolute least you would accept if I got you paid in 30 days? If it doesn't match into that criteria, that sweet spot of 40 up to 50% of the ARV, the after repair value, the actual value of the house, then be willing to walk away from the deal. We're not doing deals just to do deals. We're doing deals that make financial sense. This is about making money. So this is about making financial sense for you. So be willing to walk away from the deal. And lastly, the question that you want to ask to the seller, to the actual person, to the buyer, the person that actually has the money, is how soon can you close? When they tell you they're interested in the property, they want to buy it for $50,000, and you're interested in flipping the contract, real simple. How soon can you close? And what you want to hear, the only answer that you want to hear is as soon as I can clear title. That is the only answer you want to hear. When you hear that, when you hear them say that as soon as title is cleared, then the next thing that you're going to say is I need a non-refundable $5,000 deposit or whatever represents 50% of the money that you want to make in flipping that contract, if you choose to flip that contract. You need a non-refundable deposit, and you need it 48 hours, within 48 hours of signing the contract. You create an urgency because this is a deal that they have to understand. If they don't get this deal, the next guy's going to get this deal. And that is the urgency you create, that, listen, if not you, I've got 10 other people outside waiting to knock on my door to get this deal. But I'm offering it to you right now. Are you in or are you out? So these are some tips in flipping contracts. I know a lot of people advise to flip contracts and that, it's a great thing for beginners to do. I don't necessarily think it's something that is a beginner level. Not saying that you can't do it, but I'm just trying to give you some tips along the way. But it definitely requires some creativity. It requires some managing of expectations, like I talked to you about before. You're dealing with people, in many cases, motivated sellers that are irrational, that are emotional, that are feelings driven, and you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to manage that part of the deal. You're going to have to massage that and really manage expectations. So that's it. That's what I got for you today. I don't even know how long I've been on, but I hope that you guys got some value today. I hope that you know a lot more about flipping contracts and making money in real estate with no money down, with no money to you. All that's required is your time. Definitely drop something in the comment section if you like this video or if you have a question about something. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you have a question that you want to private Facebook Messenger me, by all means, I'm willing to answer any questions. For me, this is my way of giving back and being in service. And next week, like I said, the next moneymaker is going to talk about those motivated sellers. We're going to talk about how to get those motivated sellers. So that's the next level. Next level of this real estate game is how, regardless if you're flipping a contract or flipping a house, how are you getting these motivated sellers? So with that, I'm going to sign off. As I love to say, the greatest days of your life are ahead of you. Have that confidence. Go out there. Be willing to make a mess. Be willing to make mistakes. The greatest masters were all once a disaster. Remember that. Be courageous enough to go out there and step into the unknown. Risk your brilliance and go out there and let go of the mediocrity life for something that's unimaginable, a lifestyle that's unimaginable, not just for you, but for your children, for your favorite charities. Go out there and risk your brilliance. So with that, I'm signing off. The greatest days of your life are ahead of you. I love you, and I'll see you at the top.